I'm underwater again. Not in memory this time. In January river water, so cold it doesn't feel like drowning. It feels like burning. My hands won't let go of his collar. A man I don't know. A man who should already be dead. But something in his face, even unconscious, even pale as marble, looks like mine did the last time I saw my reflection. Like he's been waiting to die for a very long time. They say you can't save someone twice your size from a sinking car. They're right. But no one tells you what happens when you do it anyway. When the impossible thing you accomplished changes everything, not because you're a hero, but because some debts can only be repaid in blood. If you've ever felt like the world sees straight through you, like you stopped mattering a long time ago, you're not alone here. Stories like this don't show up in your feed by accident. And they don't come back once you let them go. The beam from Officer Novak's flashlight cut through the midnight snow like a knife, finding me huddled beneath Chicago's Wacker Drive, where the concrete met the frozen river. 32 years old, but my body had stopped keeping honest count somewhere around 45. 98 pounds if you counted the 3 layers of donated coats I wore even indoors, even in my sleep. My hands shook constantly now, not from cold, though Chicago in January was merciless, but from something broken inside that doctors couldn't fix when you had no insurance and no address. Still here, Wilkins? Novak's voice carried that particular contempt reserved for people he decided didn't count as human anymore. He kicked my cardboard lean-to, scattering the newspapers I'd carefully arranged to block the wind. That's loitering. That's my jurisdiction. That's my problem to solve. I struggled to my feet, my lungs rattling with every breath. The pneumonia had never really left after last winter. It just lived in my chest now, a permanent resident. I'm moving. Just give me a... Your trash, he interrupted, crushing the plastic bag of aluminum cans I'd spent 2 weeks collecting. They represented maybe $8. Maybe enough for antibiotics from the free clinic if I got there before they ran out. His boot heel ground them into the frozen mud like he was putting out a cigarette. You know what we do with trash in the city? We throw it away. What Novak didn't know, what he couldn't see through the sheets of snow blowing off Lake Michigan, was that in exactly 43 seconds, a midnight blue Bentley Continental worth more than most people's houses would lose control on Lakeshore Drive overhead. The driver, an impossibly beautiful man named Robin Statham who hadn't been human in over 300 years, would overcorrect on black ice at 60 miles per hour. And the broken homeless woman he was currently degrading would make a choice that would shatter the careful boundaries between Chicago's mortal world and the ancient darkness that ruled beneath it. Because physics says a 98-pound woman with diseased lungs cannot pull 230 pounds of unconscious immortal out of a submerged luxury vehicle in 34-degree water. But I had stopped believing in impossible a long time ago. I'd survived things that should have killed me. I'd endured what should have broken me. And on this particular frozen January night, I was about to do something that made no sense at all. I was about to care about someone other than myself. One last time. Novak spat into the slush beside my worn-through boots and turned away. His flashlight beam swept once more across my face like a slap, then vanished as he climbed back towards street level. His patrol car roared to life. Red taillights bled into the falling snow. Then everything fell silent except for the rush of the river and the distant hum of traffic overhead. I stood there shaking, from cold, from illness, from the crushing weight of existing in a world that had decided I didn't matter. I knelt in the frozen mud and started gathering the crushed cans anyway. 90 cents worth now instead of $8. But 90 cents was 90 cents. When you're this far down, you count everything. You waste nothing. You save every scrap because you never know which scrap will be the one that keeps you alive another day. My fingers found the cheap cord around my neck where my mother's wedding ring still hung. The only thing I hadn't sold, hadn't traded, hadn't lost. Cold metal against colder skin. I closed my eyes for just a second and tried to remember her voice, but 12 years had blurred it into something that might have been real or might have been what I needed it to be. You have to promise me you'll live, she'd said in those final days when the cancer had already won. Even when you don't want to. Even when it hurts. You have to keep living. But living like this wasn't really living. It was just dying slowly enough that no one had to watch. I was just reaching for the last crushed can when the sound tore through the night. Not thunder, not a truck backfiring, but the scream of tires trying desperately to grip ice that didn't care about desperation. Sharp, metallic. The sound of someone losing a battle with physics and gravity and momentum all at once. Then metal screaming against metal. The guardrail above shattering like bone. Glass exploding. And silence, the terrible, suspended silence of something heavy hanging in midair, gravity momentarily forgotten. I looked up. The Bentley hung there for an impossible heartbeat, suspended between the bridge and the river like a question the universe was still deciding how to answer. Snow swirled around it. The streetlights caught its perfect midnight blue paint. I saw everything with the strange clarity that comes right before something irrevocable happens. The way the front wheels were still spinning. The way the driver's window was slightly open. The way the car seemed to pause, as if it knew what was coming and was trying to bargain for just a few more seconds. Then gravity remembered its job. The Bentley plunged nose first into the Chicago River with a sound like the world breaking. Water shot 15 feet into the air. Waves crashed toward where I stood frozen on the concrete embankment. The car struck so hard I felt the vibration through my boots. And then it was sinking, fast, too fast, the front already swallowed by black water, only the trunk visible like a drowning hand reaching for help that wasn't coming. Through the driver's window, I saw him. A figure slumped over the steering wheel. Large. Motionless. Not moving. Above me on the bridge, I heard shouting. Someone screaming. The sharp bark of someone calling 911. But down here by the river, there was only me and the sinking car. 60 seconds, maybe less. That was all the time left before the river claimed him forever. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to turn away. To walk back to my cardboard shelter and pretend I'd seen nothing. Who was I to save anyone? I couldn't even save myself. I was dying by degrees under a bridge, coughing blood into my hands at night, counting crushed cans like they were treasure. I was nobody. Nothing. Officer Novak was right. I was trash. But my legs were already moving. One step, then another, carrying me toward the water, like something else was controlling them. Like some part of me that hadn't completely given up yet was making this decision without consulting the part that knew better. I stripped off my outer coat and dropped it in the mud. Then the second coat. Then the third. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely untie my boots, but I managed it. I stood there in just my torn jeans and a thin thermal shirt, staring at the black water that was about to either kill me or teach me something about myself I wasn't sure I wanted to know. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know if he was good or bad. I didn't know if he deserved to be saved. I only knew that someone was dying, and I was the only one here. The only one who could do anything. When was the last time I'd felt like I mattered? I couldn't remember. Maybe tonight I would. Or maybe tonight I would die with a stranger beneath the freezing river. Either way, at least I wouldn't die as someone who walked away. I drew a breath, my lungs burning, whistling, protesting, and dove into the water. The cold hit me like God's fist if God hated me personally. 34 degrees. Cold enough to stop your heart if you stayed in it too long. Cold enough to make your muscles seize and your brain short-circuit and your body forget every survival instinct except get out, get out, get out. The thermal shock blasted every thought out of my head. My lungs spasmed. My body locked up. And for 3 terrible seconds, I forgot how to swim. I forgot how to do anything except sink. The darkness swallowed me. Water flooded my nose, my mouth. And I thought, this is it. This is how I die. Not from starvation or disease or Novak's boot, but because I was stupid enough to jump into a frozen river for a stranger. Then something deep inside me, something stubborn and furious and absolutely done with dying, kicked back. My arms started moving. My legs started kicking. And I remembered being 7 years old at the public pool with my mother before everything fell apart. Before the cancer. Before I understood that the world was a place that broke people and didn't apologize. You're a strong swimmer, baby, my mother had said. You can do anything you set your mind to. I kicked hard. My body cut through the black water toward the sinking Bentley. Every stroke was a war. The current pulled at me, trying to drag me downstream like all the other debris it claimed. But I wasn't debris. At least not tonight. Tonight, I was something else. I reached the car just as the driver's window went under. I dove down, my hands finding the door handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. Luxury cars locked automatically on impact, turning themselves into beautiful coffins. Through the window, I saw him clearly for the first time. Impossibly handsome, the kind of face that belonged on movie screens, not in sinking cars. Dark hair. Pale skin. Too pale, even accounting for blood loss. He looked wrong. Like a painting instead of a person. Like something carved from marble and given breath for just a little while. His eyes were closed. Blood streamed from a gash on his forehead, clouding the water around his face. He wasn't moving. Maybe he was already dead. Maybe I was drowning myself for a corpse. But I'd come this far. My lungs started screaming for air. I had maybe 30 seconds before I'd have to surface or die with him. I looked around desperately and saw it. A chunk of broken concrete from the bridge support, half buried in the riverbed silt. I grabbed it. It was heavier than anything I'd lifted in months, and my muscles shrieked in protest. But I dragged it up, positioned it, and smashed it into the driver's window. The first hit did nothing. The second made spiderweb cracks. The third strike, with every shred of strength left in my starving, diseased body, shattered the glass. Water rushed into the car, like a flood breaking through a dam. I dropped the concrete and shoved myself through the broken window frame. Glass shards carved into my arms, my shoulders, painting the water red. But I didn't feel pain. I felt only one thing. He has to live. I don't know why, but he has to. I grabbed his collar. Expensive fabric, custom-tailored, the kind of thing I'd never touched in my life, and pulled. He was so heavy. 230 pounds of unconscious muscle and bone and something else, something dense and ancient I couldn't name. But I'd dragged garbage bags heavier than this through Chicago alleys for recycling money. I'd survived being beaten by men twice my size. I would not be defeated by a frozen river. I kicked, hauled him through the broken window, wrapped my arm around his chest, and started swimming upward with the last oxygen burning in my lungs. Every meter was a lifetime. Every kick was a prayer to a god I'd stopped believing in. My vision started to blur. Stars danced in front of my eyes like fireflies at a funeral. And I thought, this is it. We're both going to die here. Then my head broke the surface. Air rushed into my lungs like life flooding back into something dead. I choked, vomited river water. But my arm never let go of him. I kicked toward the embankment, stroke by weak stroke, my body running on something beyond adrenaline, beyond survival instinct, on something I didn't have a name for. When my knees finally touched concrete, I dragged him up onto the frozen mud and collapsed beside him. The snow kept falling. The night sky spun above me. I lay there gasping, shaking so hard my bones rattled, and thought maybe this was how hypothermia felt right before it killed you. But at least I wouldn't die alone. And at least he was still breathing. I could see his chest rising and falling, shallow but steady. I heard sirens getting closer. Saw flashlight beams sweeping down from the bridge. They were coming. Help was coming. And that's when I knew I had to leave. Because heroes get questioned. Heroes get photographed. Heroes get their names and faces in the news. And when you're homeless with warrants you didn't even know about from traffic tickets you couldn't pay, when you're undocumented in the system because your ex-husband destroyed your identity along with everything else, when you're invisible by necessity and not by choice, you can't afford to be a hero. I forced my frozen body upright, crawled toward the darkness beneath the bridge. Every movement was agony, but I kept moving, inch by inch, fingernails scraping concrete, knees raw against ice and gravel. I looked back once. The paramedics had reached him. They were doing chest compressions, breathing for him, saving him in all the official ways I couldn't. I saw his chest rise, saw him cough, saw water spill from his mouth. He was alive. Something inside me that had been clenched tight for years finally loosened. Just a little. Just enough to hurt. I had done it.
Me.
The trash beneath the bridge. The ghost in the city. The woman Officer Novak said didn't matter. I had saved a life. Maybe it was the only meaningful thing I'd done in all my 32 years. I turned away and crawled into the shadows where the flashlights couldn't reach. Where I'd learned to disappear. Where women like me always disappeared. And as the sirens wailed and the rescuers shouted, and the city woke up to witness a miracle, I vanished like I'd never been there at all. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that above me, mounted on the bridge support, a traffic camera had recorded everything. Every impossible second. Every moment of a 98-pound woman doing what physics said couldn't be done. And when the vampire king of Illinois woke up and learned that he was still alive, he would find that footage. And he would turn the entire city upside down to find the ghost who saved him. Because in his world, debts of blood are the only debts that truly matter. And this debt would change everything. Robin Statham woke to firelight and the taste of his own blood in his mouth. The study was exactly as he'd left it 3 centuries ago when he'd first claimed this estate. Mahogany paneling, floor-to-ceiling books in languages half the world had forgotten, Persian rugs worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Everything familiar. Everything controlled. Except for the fact that he shouldn't be waking up at all. You're lucky to be conscious. His sister Celeste stood by the window, backlit by the pre-dawn glow over Lake Michigan. She looked like she always did, ageless, flawless, and currently furious. The brake line was cut professionally. Lucien's work. He's been planning this for months. Robin sat up slowly, testing his body for damage. Bruised ribs. Concussion healing. The gash on his forehead already closed. Everything working exactly as it should for a 300-year-old vampire. Everything except the part where he was alive when he should be ash at the bottom of the Chicago River. How did I? You were pulled out. Celeste crossed her arms. By a human. Before the car sank completely. Robin's hand went to his chest, to the strange ache that had been there since he woke. Not pain. Something else. Something that felt like an echo of someone else's heartbeat overlapping with his own.
Who?
We don't know yet. But we have this. She handed him a tablet. Security footage from the bridge, grainy and snow-blurred but clear enough. He watched the Bentley lose control. Watched it crash through the guardrail in a spray of metal and glass. Watched it plunge into the river with the kind of impact that should have killed anything inside. Then he watched her. A woman. So thin she looked like she might blow away in the wind. Stripping off layers of ragged coats. Diving into water that should have stopped her heart before she got 10 feet. Disappearing beneath the surface for so long Robin found himself holding his breath watching footage of something that had already happened. When she surfaced, dragging his unconscious body with her, Robin paused the video. She was looking directly at the camera without knowing it, her face tilted up as she gasped for air. Wet hair plastered to her skull. Skin so pale, it was almost translucent. Eyes that, even through the grainy footage, looked like they'd already seen the worst the world had to offer and decided to keep going anyway. She looked like she was drowning and saving someone at the same time. A human woman, Robin said quietly. His finger traced her outline on the screen. Starving.
Diseased.
She should have let me drown. She should have, Celeste agreed. But she didn't. The question is why. Robin felt it again. That strange pull in his chest. That sense of something tied to him that hadn't been there before. When she'd pulled him through that broken window, when her torn hands had gripped his collar and her blood had mixed with his in the freezing water, something had happened. An accidental bond. Fragile. Temporary. But real enough that he could feel her even now. Feel her dying. Find her, he said, standing. The room spun for a moment before his equilibrium returned. I don't care what it costs. Find her. 3 days. That's how long it took Iris, his head of security, a former hunter who'd switched sides a century ago, to find the ghost who'd saved him. 3 days of searching every bridge, every shelter, every place the city's invisible people gathered. 3 days of Robin feeling that bond grow weaker with each passing hour. On the 3rd night, Iris called. I found her, my lord. Abandoned building on West Harrison. But there's a problem. She's dying. Severe hypothermia, pneumonia that's gone septic, dehydration. She's barely conscious. I don't think she's going to make it through the night. Something cold and sharp twisted in Robin's chest. Bring her to me.
Now.
Don't let her die, Iris. Whatever you have to do, don't let her die. When Iris carried her through the door an hour later, Robin understood why it had taken 3 days to find her. She'd made herself invisible. The kind of invisible that came from years of practice. The kind that meant survival. She was unconscious, her breathing so shallow Iris had to keep checking to make sure she was still alive. Her skin was gray. Her lips blue. The smell of infection and illness and slow death clung to her like a shroud. Dr. Yoon worked through the night. For fluids, antibiotics, warming blankets, all the medicine that modern science and immortal knowledge could provide. And through it all, Robin sat in the corner and watched this stranger who'd given him back his life, now fighting for her own. For days after Iris found her, she woke up. I woke up and didn't know where I was. And that terrified me more than dying had. The room was larger than any place I'd lived in the last 3 years.
Silk sheets.
A fireplace burning with real wood. I could smell cedar and oak. Heavy curtains blocking out daylight. Everything warm and soft and completely wrong. I tried to sit up, and my body refused. Every muscle felt like it had been replaced with broken glass. But there was something else. Something I hadn't felt in so long I almost didn't recognize it. I wasn't in pain. The constant ache in my chest was gone. My lungs drew breath without that terrible wet rattle. My head felt clear for the first time in months. Whatever they'd done to me, whatever medicine they'd used, it had worked. You're awake. The voice came from the shadows by the window.
Deep.
Controlled. The kind of voice that expected to be obeyed. He stepped into the firelight, and I stopped breathing for an entirely different reason. Beautiful didn't cover it. Beautiful was for normal people. He was something else. Something carved from marble and moonlight and danger. Who are you?
My voice came out as a rasp.
Where am I? You're safe. He moved closer. My name is Robin Statham. You're in my home. You've been unconscious for 4 days. The river.
The car.
The man with the pale face underwater. I looked at him, really looked, and recognized the shape of his face. You were drowning. I was. Something flickered across his expression. And you, a woman who could barely keep herself alive, dove into freezing water to save me. Why? I wanted to give him something profound, some noble reason. But I was too tired for lies. Because you were dying and I was the only one there. He went very still. You didn't know who I was. Should I have? Most people in this city know my name. Most people would have thought very carefully before saving me. He said it without arrogance. Just fact. What are you? I asked because I could see it now. The way he held himself. The controlled power. The sense that he was something very old wearing the shape of something young. You don't know. For the first time, something like surprise crossed his face. I know you're not normal. I know you should be dead. No human survives that, he agreed quietly. The word hung in the air. Human. Meaning he wasn't. You're a vampire, I said. Yes. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt something settle in my chest. A strange calm. Because in a twisted way, it made sense. And you brought me here because you saved my life. In my world, that creates a debt that must be honored. I don't want anything from you. I just want to go. His jaw tightened. You can't. You're dying. Untreated pneumonia, malnutrition, infections I won't name. You have weeks, maybe days. I laughed. It came out bitter. Then let me die somewhere I chose. Why? He looked genuinely confused. Why did you save me if you value your own life so little? I never said I didn't value it. I said I wanted to die on my own terms. Before he could respond, Dr. Yoon entered. An examination followed. And when I removed my shirt, the room fell silent. Every scar, every burn mark, Every piece of evidence that I'd been broken over and over. Yoon documented everything with shaking hands. Robin stood and walked to the fireplace, his hands clenched into fists. Who did this to you? His voice was barely above a whisper. Does it matter? They're in the past. It matters to me. You don't owe me anything beyond the medical care you've already provided. He turned to face me. You saved my life when you had every reason to save your own strength. That creates a blood debt. And in my world, those are the only debts that truly matter. I don't want your debt. Then what do you want? To be left alone. The tears came. Everyone who's ever tried to help me has hurt me worse. Every savior became an abuser. Every promise became a lie. I can't do this again. Robin sat back down. You'll stay. You'll heal. In return, I won't force you into anything except living. My mother's voice came back to me. Promise me you'll live. Even when you don't want to. How long? I asked. Until you're well enough to choose freely. I looked at him, this immortal predator who somehow understood what it meant to survive when you should have died. Okay, I'll stay. But I don't trust you. I know, he said quietly. But maybe, in time, I can show you that not everyone who offers help is trying to hurt you. The bed was too soft. That was the first problem. I lay there for 3 hours after Robin left, staring at the ceiling, feeling the mattress conform to my body in ways that made my skin crawl. At 2 a.m, I gave up. I pulled the duvet off the bed, dragged it to the corner farthest from the door, and made a nest on the hardwood floor with my back pressed against the wall. When I woke up, there was breakfast. More food than I'd seen in months. I ate half of one pastry and hid the rest under the cushion. Because you never knew when the food would stop coming. The pattern continued for days. Elaborate meals appeared. I ate just enough and hid the rest, creating emergency supplies like I was still living under a bridge. On the 4th day, Celeste came to visit. She walked in without knocking. You don't belong here. Whatever you think you'll get from my brother, you're wrong. I was sitting by the window. I didn't turn around. I don't want anything from him. Everyone wants something. I didn't ask to be here.
She studied me.
He's watching you, you know. On the security feeds. Fascinated by you like you're some puzzle he can't solve. And that terrifies me. Because mortals die, Aisha. You'll grow old and leave him alone again. After she left, I sat there thinking about being watched. About being fascinating. About being dangerous just by existing. That night, the nightmares came. I woke up screaming. Not crying. Screaming like something was being torn out of me. Aisha. Robin was standing in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light. Uncertain. You're safe, he said carefully. Nothing here will hurt you. I was shaking. You're a vampire. Everything about you could hurt me. He didn't move closer.
Yes.
But I won't. Why should I believe you? Because if I wanted to hurt you, I would have let you drown in that river. He walked to the armchair in the corner and sat. I can't make you trust me. But I'm asking you to consider the possibility that not everyone with power wants to use it to harm. Something in my chest cracked. I have nightmares. Most nights. I know. I can hear you from my room. And you came anyway. Of course I came. You're in pain. I want to help. Will you? I stopped. Will you stay? As long as you need me to. He stayed in that chair all night. And for the first time in 3 years, I fell into sleep that wasn't constantly interrupted by fear. When I woke in the morning, he was gone. But there was a note. You slept through the night. I'm glad.
R.
The late-night visits became routine. And on the 7th night, I asked him how long he'd been immortal. I was turned in 1703, he said. I've watched everyone I ever loved die. Eventually, you stop letting yourself love. It's easier than burying another person you care about. How long did it take before you stopped letting yourself feel? About a century. You? 3 years. I pulled my knees to my chest. Fast learner. I told him about my mother, about my ex-husband who destroyed everything I was, about the trafficking, about losing myself piece by piece until there was nothing left but survival. Where is he now? Robin's voice was absolutely controlled. I don't know. I don't want to know. We sat in silence, hands almost touching. We're the same, I said softly. We both learned to stop feeling because it hurt too much. Robin looked at me differently. For the first time in a century, someone looked at me and didn't see a monster first. What I didn't know was that Officer Novak had discovered I was at the Statham estate. That he'd contacted Lucian Thorne with information. The king has found a weakness. A mortal one. And Robin had ordered a full background investigation on my past. When the report arrived, he read it in silence. Then he spoke in a voice colder than the river. Find everyone who hurt her. I want names, locations, everything. By mid-January, I'd been in Robin's estate for 2 weeks. The morning the snow came, I needed to feel it on my skin. Needed to remember the world beyond these walls. Iris escorted me to the garden. It was breathtaking. Snow-covered hedges. A frozen fountain. I stood there breathing cold air, and for the first time in weeks, I felt almost alive. Then I heard the gunshot. Iris went down with a hole in her shoulder. 3 figures emerged from the hedges. Vampires. I knew it from the way they moved. The king's little mortal pet, one said. Lucian sends his regards. I had a choice. Surrender or fight. I'd spent 3 years surviving streets that ate people alive. I was done surrendering. Iris's blade had fallen in the snow. I dove for it. The closest vampire lunged. I drove the blade upward with everything I had. The shock on his face would have been funny if I wasn't terrified.
He fell.
Turned to ash. Then Robin arrived. I'd never seen him like this. He moved through the other vampires like a storm. No hesitation. No mercy. When it was over, he turned to me. I was standing with the blade in my hand, blood on my face, but my eyes were steady. Iris is hurt, I said. She needs help. He wrapped his coat around me. You're extraordinary. I laughed bitterly. I'm a stray dog who learned to bite back.
No.
You're a survivor who refuses to stay down. That night, and every night after, Robin came to my room. 10 days later was the winter solstice. He kept it small, just family. On the balcony, he pulled out a small box. Inside was a delicate silver chain. I noticed the string holding your mother's ring was fraying, he said softly. I thought you might want something stronger. I looked at the chain, then at him, and something in my chest shattered. Because he'd noticed. This ancient creature had paid attention to a detail so small I'd barely registered it. The tears came, not from pain, from being seen. He fastened the chain around my neck. When I turned to thank him, he kissed me, soft at first, then deeper. When we pulled apart, we were both shaking. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. I don't know how to let someone care without waiting for it to hurt. Then we'll learn together. Everything changed that night. We'd both decided that being terrified together was better than being safe alone. 2 weeks after solstice, at 3 in the morning, everything shattered. Alarms. Running footsteps. Robin burst through my door. Lucian is attacking. Simultaneous strikes across my territory. He grabbed my face. I have to go. I will come back. Then he was gone. The estate fell silent. I didn't hear Officer Novak enter until his hand clamped over my mouth. You're coming with me, trash. Time to remind you where you belong. He drugged me. When I woke, I was in hell. An abandoned warehouse. Zip-tied to a chair. Novak stood in front of me with that same contemptuous smile. The beating was professional. Methodical. Between blows, he talked. You think you matter to him? You're a pet. He'll forget you before spring.
You don't know him, I said.
He's a vampire, sweetheart. Your food. That's all you'll ever be. But I stayed silent and endured. Because somewhere, Robin was looking for me. Back at the estate, Robin returned to find me gone. A note on the pillow. Looking for something?
L.
The sound that came out of him wasn't human. Find her. Burn the city down if you have to. Find her. He tore through Lucian's network with ancient, terrible methods. For hours later, He found the warehouse. The door exploded inward. Robin was covered in blood. When he saw me, something in his face went absolutely still. What happened to Novak was carnage.
Swift.
Brutal. Final. Robin dropped to his knees and cut the zip ties. His hands shook as he gathered me. I'm sorry. I should have protected you. I touched his face. You came. That's what matters. At the estate, Dr. Yoon's assessment came fast. Internal bleeding. Broken ribs puncturing her lung. She's dying. Hours at most. Robin looked at Yoon with eyes that held 3 centuries. I can save her, but not as human. Through my one good eye, I looked at Robin. At this man who'd saved me from dying under a bridge. Who'd watched over my nightmares. Do it, I whispered. I'm not ready to stop living. Not when I just remembered how. Robin bit into his wrist. Brought it to my mouth. His ancient blood touched my tongue, and everything I'd been began to burn away. The last thing I saw was his face. He was crying. For the first time since his humanity ended, the vampire king was crying.
For me.
The transformation felt like dying in fire. Robin's blood burning through my veins, rewriting every cell. I screamed until my voice gave out. Through the agony, I heard his voice. I'm here. You're not alone. 3 days of fever dreams. My body tearing apart and knitting back together stronger. Robin sat beside the bed, holding my hand, whispering 300 years of stories. On the 4th day, I woke up. The first thing I noticed was sound. I could hear everything. The whisper of air. Celeste's footsteps 3 floors below. And underneath, Robin's heartbeat. I can hear your heartbeat, I said softly. His eyes opened. You're awake. I didn't know vampires had heartbeats. Old ones do.
Faint.
Easy to miss. He studied my face. How do you feel? Different. But still me. Relief washed across his face. You're not fully vampire. Your heart still beats.
You can walk in daylight.
But you're not human either. You're something new. Over the next week, Robin taught me what I'd become. How to move with new speed.
Control new strength.
Filter overwhelming senses. What happened while I was transforming?
I asked. Lucian is dead.
I destroyed him, personally. Robin's voice went flat. Novak died in custody. Your ex-husband was exposed on national news. The trafficking network was dismantled by Interpol. He showed me news reports. I watched my ex-husband's life crumble. Watched justice delivered to everyone who'd hurt me. I don't forgive them, I said quietly. I never will. But I'm letting go anyway. Robin looked at me with awe. That's not weakness. That's power. Something had crystallized during transformation. A purpose. I want to go back to school. Psychology. I want to help women who've been where I was. I want to create something that means my suffering mattered. Robin smiled. Then we'll make it happen. We stood on the balcony as the sun set, a sun I could still see because I wasn't fully vampire. Just something new. I'd died under a bridge. Been saved. Transformed. And now I was just getting started. 6 months after transformation, spring came to Chicago. Robin drove me to Northwestern on my first day of graduate school. I sat wearing clothes I'd picked out myself, not borrowed, not given, but mine.
You don't have to do this, he said.
You've survived enough. I looked at students walking past.
No.
I need to do this. For the girl I was. For women still under bridges who think they're invisible. I was given a second life. I'm not going to waste it. He squeezed my hand. Then go change the world. Walking into class felt like stepping into a version of myself I thought had died. When the professor called Aisha Wilkins, I answered without shame. Within a month, I'd started the foundation. Second Chance House, I told Robin. Not a shelter. A sanctuary where women can rebuild. 1 year after transformation, Second Chance House opened. 15 women came the first month. Women I recognized by the way they held themselves. The constant scanning for exits. The inability to accept kindness. I knew them because I had been them. One Tuesday, I received an anonymous message. I was underwater drive too. Officer Novak hurt me there. When I heard what you survived, I finally got the courage to leave. Thank you. I wrote back. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who learned to stop letting the bastards win. You matter. Welcome to the beginning of your story. Her response, that's what heroes are. People who survive and turn around to pull others from the dark. That evening, I stood on Robin's balcony watching sunset. He wrapped his arms around me. Do you regret it? He asked. Saving me? Everything that came after? I thought about the pain, the torture, the transformation, the loss of humanity. I regret that it hurt, I said. I regret the fear and having to choose between dying human or living as something else. I turned to face him. But this? Us? Who I've become. For the first time since I lost everything, I want tomorrow to come. So no, I don't regret you. Robin kissed my forehead. I've lived for 3 centuries. You taught me why I kept living. The next morning at Second Chance House, a new resident sat in the common room, arms wrapped around herself, eyes on the floor like she was trying to disappear. I sat beside her. Not too close. I'm Aisha. I run this place. You're safe here. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. Why? I showed her my scars. Because someone should have done it for me. Because I know what it feels like to think you're worthless. I don't know if I'm strong enough. I know you don't believe me yet, I said. But you matter. You always mattered. You just forgot. Let me help you remember. She started crying. Not quiet tears, but loud, ugly sobs of someone finally safe enough to break. I sat with her while she cried. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be there. As I sat there, I thought about the impossible path that brought me here. From dying under a bridge to being saved in a mansion. From torture to transformation. From giving up to giving back. I'd been underwater, hands locked on a stranger's collar, believing I was drowning. I didn't know then that when you pull someone from the dark, you pull yourself out too. I didn't know some debts become something else when you stop counting the cost. I didn't know the most broken things can be the most beautiful once they're put back together.
But I know now.
And every day I help someone else learn it too. That's not just survival. That's living. And I'm finally, impossibly, gratefully alive. There are others like us in this city where old power still watches from the shadows. Women who thought they knew what survival meant until the night they stopped surviving and started living. We don't advertise ourselves, but we recognize each other in the dark. If this felt like it was written for you, if you understood something here you haven't said out loud, don't let this be the last time you find your way back. These stories exist for the women who need them, but they're easy to lose in the noise.